Hi, this is Dr. Ned Hallowell, and welcome to my podcast called Distraction. I'm really tickled to invite and have on the show today a phenomenal woman by the name of Marie Forleo. And the reason I wanted her for our Distraction podcast is one of the best ways for a person to become focused, for a person to get out of the world of distraction, is to grow something, to start a business. And that's exactly what Marie has done. When you are focused on a project, you are necessarily excluding distraction. And so I thought she'd be a marvelous teacher for us all on how to maximize focus and reduce distraction, which she's done in her own life and is teaching scores, thousands of other adults to do as well. Welcome, my dear friend, Marie Forleo.
Ned, thank you so much for having me on.
Can you tell us how you got into that and what you're doing now, Marie?
Well, I think it starts with a core belief, and it's something that has been with me since I was very little, and it's the thing that we end the show with, MarieTV, every week, where I say the world needs that special gift that only you have. And it is my core belief that each of us come to this earth with a set of skills and strengths and talents and perspectives and ways of seeing things and saying things and expressing things that is absolutely completely unique, that there is no other person who has ever had or will have the particular combination and mosaic of talents and strengths and gifts that you have. And for you to be on this planet means that you are here to express those things. And when we start from that foundation, I've seen that it opens up people to that possibility that, you know what, that might be true. Some people already believe it. They have that suspicion. They've kind of known ever since they were little that they're here to do something particular and beautiful and quirky and all their own. And some people need some convincing. So I have both that come to me.
Well, as someone who specializes in treating ADD, I often say I don't treat disabilities. I help people unwrap their gifts.
Yes.
And they often start saying, but I don't have any. Mm-hmm. And I say, oh, believe me, you do. And join me and I'll prove it to you. But that I couldn't agree with you more that each of us has this sort of, well, you know Dan Sullivan, he calls it your unique ability, whatever you want to call it. Each of us has our own particular contribution to make. But what do you say to the cynic who says, oh, come on, that's just another slogan on a, on a bumper sticker. The life is hard and life is, it's all, if you've got connections, you can make it. Otherwise, you're on the outside looking in.
Yeah, I'll tell you, Ned, to be really quite honest, I try to keep, for me, the cynics away. I find when someone has really dug in and they are so married to that belief that life sucks and, it's only the people that are kind of born with a silver spoon in their mouth, or you have to be an extrovert, or you have to look a certain way or anything. I'm like, hey, I have an invitation. If you'd like to consider another possibility, you're going to need to leave all that behind. But I don't spend too much time trying to convince the unconverted because I find, honestly, and this is just me being really transparent, they're draining for me. Extremely draining for me.
They sure
but
are.
It is my belief from what I've seen. And I've seen people that have come our way that are, I wouldn't say cynical, just more skeptical or scared or fearful, like what you shared. They're like, gosh, I just don't know if I have any gifts.
Exactly.
They're hopeful.
Exactly.
But they're just not convinced, but they're willing to see that might be true.
I think scared is the key word. When 9/11 happened, back when you were just getting started in your business, I was asked to go on TV and give advice to parents as to what to tell their children. And I'll never forget what my daughter Lucy said. She's now 26, working at Gray Advertising in New York City, but she was only, 13 at the time. And I said, Lucy, what should I say to people? And she said, Daddy, tell them not to hold back on life out of fear. And I just thought that was so, I don't know where it came to her, but you're living proof of the wisdom of that. And it's, so how do you help someone not hold back on life out of fear?
So I think it's a combination of telling them that fear is not going to go away. It's really a companion that's by our side, and it's not necessarily a terrible thing. we had a MarieTV the other day of kind of looking at fear from a completely different perspective.
Mm-hmm.
There's an author that I love. I'm not sure if you're familiar with a book called The War of Art. It's by a gentleman named Stephen Pressfield, who I love. I adore.
Okay. I'll have to get it.
And he has this whole bit in there about fear that it's something that I agree with, that when you feel a certain amount of fear about something, and we're not talking about the kind of fear that could put you in danger, like, I'm afraid to walk into this bus or to jump off this building. We're talking about the kind of fear that you feel in your belly, those butterflies, when you think about engaging or initiating an idea or moving in a certain direction in your life. Yes, you feel scared, and what are people going to think? Are they going to judge me? Am I going to fail? But there's also this other little part of you that feels incredibly excited. If you're willing to admit it to yourself, there's something in that seed of a possibility that makes your heart expand. That's the kind of fear we're talking about here. Yeah. And Pressfield says, the more fear that we feel towards a particular calling, the more that we know it is vital for the growth of our soul. And that's not a direct quote. That's my kind of paraphrasing. But the concept is this, is that you can use that type of fear almost like a GPS. It's telling you, it's your soul telling you where you should go. And when we start to look at fear that way, it's almost like it's excitement with the brakes on. If we gave ourselves just a little permission to play or to experiment and to engage in that direction, what we start to discover is our aliveness. One of the things that was challenging for me, Ned, was I often called myself a multi-passionate entrepreneur because one of my struggles was there were so many different things I wanted to do. Yes, I loved coaching, but I also loved dance. I loved fitness. I loved spirituality. I loved writing. I loved marketing. And many of the career books, I know we're backtracking a little, but I think it's relevant. One of the fears that can stop many of us from uncovering our gifts and from using them in this world is we're afraid to choose the wrong one. We're like, how do I know this is the right one? How do I know this is the direction, that it's not just some hobby or something I'm going to give up? And there's a mantra I live my life by called clarity comes from engagement, not thought. And if there's anything that you suspect could be your calling or could lead you on the path to discovering it, that you need to give yourself permission to go experiment with it, take a class, do a little something, take a weekend workshop, read a book, whatever that thing is. If it's around cooking, maybe cooking a meal for your friends. There's just a myriad of ways that we can dip our toe into the water of the thing that we are quote unquote afraid of. That's also terribly exciting. And what I've seen is that our body has a truth that comes alive the moment we engage in that particular direction. We get so much information.
I love that. I love that.
To keep going or not to. And that's one of the ways that we can start to unwrap our gifts.
So your body will tell you. Yeah. So clarity comes from engagement, not thought. You just get involved, connect, walk into the party,
Take some small action. If you pay enough attention, if you're able to get still enough in the sense where you can feel your sensations, you can actually feel your body, you're not just living from the neck up. It becomes really clear really fast if you're like, wow, this is amazing. Or you might say, well, it was a fantasy and this is kind of fun, but I can't see it anything as something I'd want to do or do, consistently day in and day out. It might just be a passion or something that lights you up. Going back to that cynic person, if they were to engage whatsoever, wow, I've always wanted to sing and just took a singing lesson or went to go do some karaoke, they might start to unlock and unfreeze a part of themselves that has been hidden for so long and just dormant. And what can start to unfold from that can be really magical.
Oh, you're so spot on. And I loved another phrase you used, excitement with the brakes on.
Yes.
Yeah. So,
that's, again, just making the distinction. We're not talking about jumping off of buildings. We're not talking about doing anything that could ruin your life financially or emotionally or physically. We're talking about the kind of very real fear that can be equally as paralyzing, equally as terrifying. But we know, our logical, rational minds know, going to take a singing class, going to paint, going to learn to design something, typically there's not going to be any danger, real unrecoverable danger from that.
I remember when I was in the 12th grade, my English teacher, I went to a school called Exeter up in New Hampshire, and he in September, I wrote a short story, and he challenged me to turn it into a novel. And I thought, gee, I knew Exeter was a tough school. I didn't know I had to write a novel. But I was the only kid he challenged to do that. And so on the one hand, I was totally terrified. I can't write a novel. But on the other hand, I was sort of secretly flattered, excitement with the brakes on. And I went ahead with it and actually wrote a novel, and it gave me a career as a writer. But getting me to, I mean, I think that's what a great mentor can do, and what you do for your clients, students, whatever you call them, that is getting someone to do something they would have thought was impossible.
Yes.
Yeah. That builds a kind of unstoppable optimism, confidence, motivation, all of that. If you can draw out of them what they would have thought was impossible to do.
Absolutely. And part of the way that we do that is framing it in these series of experiments. And also in our work, community is very important to me, and it's become an enormous part of our brand and an enormous part of what people get out of doing the work that they do with my company.
Yes.
Because, for many of us going on this brave new journey, our friends and our family might not get it. They might not be in that particular place, or might not be the people that are going to be best to receive your, learnings and your failures and your flops and what happened and what didn't happen and the disappointments. And so we have, series of experiments that people can do and say, hey, just go and do this. And then they come back and they share, what happened.
Give me an example of an experiment.
One of the exercises that we have people do very early on in the program is emailing out to 25 friends and colleagues and asking them about what their friends and colleagues and family perhaps see as their top 3 strengths. People are terrified to do that exercise, terrified to do it for understandable reasons, right?
Yeah.
We're kind of triggering a lot of different things. Like you're asking people to tell you nice things about you. Like there's so much that's embedded in there. However, when people actually do it and they just go, you know what? I trust Marie. I've trusted her throughout this process. I'm going to do this exercise. I'm just going to have this experiment. What comes back is extraordinary. The connection that they feel, the common threads of the words that people use to describe their strengths as they see them. And not only do people feel extraordinarily connected to themselves, they feel connected to these 25 friends and colleagues who just took a moment or two, to share what they view as their friend or sister or colleague's top strengths.
That's such a brilliant exercise. I love that.
It's extraordinary. And so what happens is people will do it, and then they'll come back into our member area and share what happens, which then gives someone else the strength or the courage to then go do it and come back and share their results. And, wow, what did you see? And I couldn't believe I started crying when these emails started coming in, and it opened up a conversation. And, from a more strategic perspective, one woman did this, and she reconnected with a past client who she hadn't done some work with before. And that client was like, oh, my goodness, I have this project. I forgot about you, and thank you for sending me this email. Would you like this project? And she's like, I needed to book another client. And so there were all these beautiful things that came from this single exercise of reaching out. So to tag back to what you said, Ned, part of what we do is helping people take these small steps that are experiments, yet at the same time build momentum, build courage, build bravery, build connection. And when you start to get that momentum going in that particular direction, people do start to feel unstoppable, not in the sense that there's not going to be setbacks or disappointments or flops or failures, but they start to build this conviction for themselves that they have something valuable to offer and that they understand how to keep getting back up and putting it out there.
I love that. And I think the corporate coach would say, send an email to 25 colleagues and friends about what are your chief failings. And instead you're saying, send an email, what are my chief talents? And it's such a different emphasis. And as you say, it makes people almost equally fearful to hear praise as to hear criticism.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you don't want to, if you think about it from a very simplistic perspective, you don't want to be a nag. You don't want to bother anyone.
Right,
you don't want to look like you're fishing for compliments.
Right, exactly.
But I give them this framing, say, hey, look, tell them you are working through a business course, a creative course, and this is one of your assignments. You can just blame it on me.
It's so brilliant, Marie. I could talk to you all day. I think we're coming time to wrap up. But for listeners, would you please tell them how they can reach you and learn more about you and connect with you?
Absolutely. So a few things. We send out an incredible MarieTV, which is my online show, every Tuesday. And you can go find, there's hundreds of free episodes. They're all really fun. They're inspiring. They're action-oriented. And they do have some quirk and some of my weird, wacky humor, because I do have a very weird sense of humor, but all fun stuff at marieforleo.com. And if you hop on the email newsletter over there, we don't send a ton of emails. I just send you updates and inspiring things and, of course, our show each week.
Well, you really are one of the most extraordinary people I know, and I love your boundless positivity, but also proven in the furnace of real life. You know, you're not just spouting platitudes. You've gone out and done it, and now you're helping other people do it. And what could be better than that? I'm honored to call you my friend, and really tickled that you could join us for this podcast.
Oh, thank you, Ned. It was my absolute honor to be here, and I love that you're doing it because, again, it's a mutual admiration society. Your episode that we did together is one of our most popular and beloved, so thank you.
Marie, thank you so much. You're a true inspiration, not only for women and entrepreneurs, but for people in general who want to live life to the fullest. You certainly do that, and thank you for sharing your energy and wisdom with us. If you have an issue, a question, or a suggestion, call us toll-free at 844-55-CONNECT or go to our website at distractionpodcast.com. To hear more mini and full-length episodes, subscribe to Distraction on iTunes. And thanks so much for listening. Distraction is produced by Collisions, the podcast division of CRN International. Collisions, podcasts for curious people.